Can I first of all set out what I believe that we have achieved at this summit, and then ask the President of the European Commission and finally the President of the United States to speak to you. As you know, there have been for some years serious differences over what for the US is sanctions policy and for the EU is extraterritoriality. And what we've established today is at least a basis for a lasting solution to these problems. We've avoided a showdown over sanctions with which we don't agree, and we've done it in a way that at least provides the chance of a solution to the problem in the future. And the President of the United States will set out the US position in a moment. So there's still more work to do, but it is a real step forward. In addition, today we have launched a major new transatlantic trade initiative, the Transatlantic Economic Partnership, which will further add momentum to the process of developing what is already the most important bilateral trade relationship in the world. We've also agreed to work ever more closely together to promote multilateral trade liberalisation. Finally, we have welcomed the very substantial report presented to us by our senior officials on the progress achieved since our last summit towards further implementation of the 1995 new transatlantic trade agreement. Some examples of this are cooperation to prevent drug smuggling through the Caribbean, a joint decision to give awards to those in Central and Eastern Europe who have helped in recent years to entrench democracy and civil rights in those countries, and a joint EU-US program in the Ukraine and Poland to warn women of the dangers of being lured into the sex trade in Western Europe. So there are a series of measures that we have put together and agreed, and we have made very substantial progress on both the issues of sanctions and extraterritoriality, and of course in taking forward our trade partnership through a major new trade initiative. And I'm delighted to be able to make those announcements to you today. Jacques, do you want to add something? I don't think, Adam, anyone is trying to say that investment is conditional on how people vote, but what people are saying is it's a matter of common sense. If there's peace and stability in Northern Ireland, there is a far greater chance of attracting investment, that people from Europe, from the United States, from right round the world see Northern Ireland as an immensely exciting investment opportunity, but obviously it is far easier for them to come and invest if they're investing in the context of peace and stability. And I know that there are still people in Northern Ireland yet to make up their minds. And in the end, the decision has got to be for people in Northern Ireland. But I have answered very clearly and specifically some of the questions that people have put to me. I have tried to tell people why it is so important that they recognize that the choice is not between the future that we've outlined in this agreement, which is the only chance I've seen of a peaceful, successful future for Northern Ireland, and the status quo as it exists now. The danger that we foresee is that the real choice is between the agreement and everything slipping back. And we want to do as much as we possibly can to avoid that, because we recognize, as your question implies, that if we can get real peace and stability there, well, the chances for people in Northern Ireland are just amazing, and we would like them to take advantage of that. Sorry, Mr. President.
Well, I agree with that. There's no sort of quid pro quo here. It's just a fact.
It's true. Actually, I'm ashamed to say I haven't played golf, but I had the best teacher I could possibly have. It's not everyone who says he's been given golfing lessons by the President of the United States of America. But we will put it down to beginner's luck, a bit like politics.
Go ahead, Paul, and then we'll. But you go next, and then I'll take all of you. Go ahead, but go ahead, Paul. You go next.
Mr. President, have you or will you
very clear points of agreement that were established in our G8 discussions. The first is our condemnation of the Indian nuclear test. The second is our desire to see India integrate itself unconditionally into the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty process. And I believe if we need to look at the way forward from here, it is not merely a question of expressing our dismay and concern, which I did personally to the Indian Prime Minister last Friday. It is also finding the best way forward from now. And we expressed that very clearly at the G8. I'm sure that is the position of all of the European Union countries as well. And I think the most persuasive argument with Pakistan is to say very clearly to them that if India believes that it enhances its standing in the world by this action, it does not. And all of us are deeply conscious of the threat and danger to the security of the world that nuclear testing poses. So that is why I think it is important to see where we go from here. And the statement of the G8, particularly in relation to the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, was both important and significant.
I mean, I think it's in many ways a battle between fear and emotion on the one hand and reason and hope on the other. And the fear and the emotion is totally understandable, but it is important that people vote for reason and hope. And I say that because people ask me for reassurances on certain of the key items of the agreement. They say, reassure us that the IUC is not going to be disbanded or stop being a proper police force. I give that reassurance. That will be plain. I give the reassurance, the absolute commitment, that if the cross-community provisions in the agreement to exclude people from office, if they engage in violence, if those don't work, then they will be changed. That will be in the legislation. I give the explicit commitment to people that decommissioning will be a factor that we take into account, a factor there specified in the legislation, so that if people aren't abiding by the decommissioning arrangements of the Independent Commission on Decommissioning, then that can mean their exclusion or removal from office. I give the explicit commitment that people, whether in the Assembly or the Shadow Assembly, cannot sit in office in Northern Ireland if they're engaged in the ballot box and the gun as a twin strategy. Now, all those reassurances I can give, but in the end, it depends whether people are really wanting to give themselves the chance for stability and prosperity in the future, because the alternative is not where we are now. The alternative is for Northern Ireland to slip back. So I hope that people will take that chance for the future.
Well, of course, the United States is the home of the largest Irish diaspora, both Irish Protestants and Irish Catholics. And so I suppose outside of the people involved, we care more about it than any other people. And I've worked hard to create the conditions within which the Irish could make their own peace. And what I would like to say is, first, I'm convinced there will be a great deal of increased interest in and investment in and partnership with Northern Ireland if this matter can be carried forward. Secondly, I have made it as clear as I can that anyone who abandons the peace, if this agreement is embraced, anybody who returns to violence is never going to be a friend of the United States. We won't tolerate it, we won't support it, we will do everything we can to affirmatively oppose it. But finally, I remember when I went there in December of '95. I remember the looks on the faces of the people, especially the young people, the school children I spoke with, both the Protestant and the Catholic children. And I'd just like to ask the voters to imagine what will happen if they vote no? And what do they really have to lose by voting yes? By giving this a chance. I mean, their leaders came up with this plan. Prime Minister Blair worked very hard on it, Prime Minister Ahern did, but the leaders in Northern Ireland agreed to this plan. What have they got to lose, really, by trying it? Nothing. But they have a great deal to lose by walking away. And I hope that they won't walk away. And, of course, we try every year now. We have an international fund for Ireland. We have a very active group of American citizens from both the Protestant and Catholic communities, Irish citizens who try to increase investment. But I can tell you that the wave of elation that will sweep the Friends of Ireland in the United States, should this be accepted, will be enormous. And there will just be a lot more willingness to get involved here and try to help build the future.
And in terms of the... Well, I think the point is that the principle of consent, in other words, that you can argue a case, whether it's for Northern Ireland remaining inside the UK or a united Ireland, the principle of consent means you have to argue it by democracy, not violence. And so people are free to argue their case but it's a way of arguing it that is peaceful. And one of the strange things about the debate in Northern Ireland is that people aren't actually arguing now about the principle of consent. That was what, for 50, 60 years divided people in Northern Ireland. People now accept that. They're not even arguing about the institutional structures, the cross-border bodies, the Northern Ireland Assembly. That, in a sense, is agreed as well. It is this fear and emotion, as I say, and you see, prisoners is an example of it. And let me again try and go right to the heart of what I think people feel in Northern Ireland. They see the scenes of the Balcombe Street gang or Michael Stone, and they say, well, this is wrong. And the No campaign then say, well, the prisoners will be back on the street if you vote for this agreement. Again, the facts are these. Michael Stone and the Balcombe Street gang were allowed out under provisions on day release, made many, many years ago before I even came to government. They're nothing to do with the agreement. Most of the prisoners now in jail in Northern Ireland will be out within a few years anyway. But they'll be out, of course, without the agreement and without stability if there's a no vote. So, again, I understand the concerns that people have, but I do ask them to realise that if no is the vote next week, what is the future? I mean, what are we going to offer children in Northern Ireland?
You know, if I could just say, sort of as an interested friend, an outside observer, as you know, I've been very involved in the Bosnian peace and the Middle East peace process. I think essentially the people that are for this want a better future for their children and don't want any more violence, and like the fact that there is now a process which has been agreed upon for moving forward. And if you really listen to the arguments of the people that are against it, and I've tried to listen very respectfully, it is that they still don't trust those on the other side because of all the things that have gone before. In 1993, Itzhak Rabin, right before we signed the agreement between Israel and PLO, said to me, he said, you know, I have spent my life as a soldier. I have killed a lot of these people and they have killed a lot of my people. But he said, Mr. President, you don't make peace with your friends. You make peace and then you make friends. And I think that's important here. But this is much, in Northern Ireland, the people live much more closely together. They have, in some ways, they haven't killed each other in the way the Bosnians did. They haven't done, with all the horrible things. They can get over this if they just will take it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but the risks of doing it are so much less than the risks of walking away.